The Backrooms. Endless Oppositions. Entity number 234. Meaningless Oppositions. Class 4A. Tentative. Habitats. Levels containing MEG or UEC bases. Properties. Unique aggressive. Image caption. A close-up photo of Entity 234-A, captured by UEC personnel in Level 218. Dead Man's Mile. It should be pointed out that taking photos of this entity at this distance poses a life-threatening risk. Response measures. According to a series of treaties signed between MEG Team Overseers and UEC Team Hands of Athena in 2022 regarding Entity 234, if the MEG/UEC discovers a trace of Entity 234 in an established base/outpost, they should notify the other party as soon as possible. Correspondingly, the other party should dispatch its subordinate military forces to the level in question in a timely manner to conduct long-range strikes on the discovered Entity 234 instances until they are eliminated. During this period, a cordon should be set up around the affected area to prevent bystanders from being harmed by Entity 234. Due to the deceptive appearance of Entity 234 instances, the MEG/UEC should remain calm and fully trust the other party in all response measures related to Entity 234. When the identity of the discovered individual as Entity 234 is uncertain, they should be promptly reported and not attacked or suspected of being an armed member of the other party. Although both sides are working hard to put an end to this phenomenon, the cross-level crackdown on Entity 234 will inevitably lead to conflicts between the two sides and cause public panic. However, due to the special capabilities of Entity 234, there are currently no alternative solutions available. At present, the emergence and actions of Entity 234 have formed a vicious cycle of long-standing hostile behavior between the MEG and the UEC. According to pessimistic estimates, allowing this vicious cycle to continue could lead to a full-scale war between the two sides. Description: Entity 234 is a type of humanoid entity that appears in levels containing MEG/UEC bases. This entity has two variants, labeled Entity 234-A and Entity 234-B respectively. Their biological characteristics are identical, with a height of about 2 meters, enhanced physical capabilities, and they have heightened endurance and are highly aggressive. However, there are various differences in behavior, appearance, and special abilities and habitats between Entity 234-A and Entity 234-B. They will be described separately in the following text. Furthermore, based on long-term observations, the frequency of Entity 234 instances is correlated with the level of tension between the MEG and the UEC. When the relationship between the two organizations becomes fragile, the frequency of Entity 234 manifestations will increase. Although the MEG and the UEC have signed a treaty to ensure sincere and effective cooperation on the issue of Entity 234, there is still a strong sense of distrust among grassroots personnel on both sides. Due to long-term confrontational internal propaganda and ideological opposition, personnel from both sides often fail to cooperate effectively. Some even attack members of another organization in response to actions related to Entity 234. Footnote: see Addendum 1A. End footnote. So this is the biggest reason why Entity 234 currently poses a huge threat. Entity 234-A. Habitats. Levels containing UEC bases. The attire of Entity 234-A closely resembles that of armed MEG personnel from the Wild Warriors Regiment. However, a notable distinction sets Entity 234-A apart from their human counterparts. Each entity is equipped with a firearm that utilizes a unique type of bullet. This makes them appear more like military personnel, and is an important way to distinguish them. After this special bullet hits and penetrates the target, a small explosion will occur inside. The impact force generated by the explosion will shoot out the triangular blade of the warhead. This design allows ammunition to not only penetrate the outer surface of the target, but also cause serious damage inside it. People who are hit by such bullets usually suffer from extremely severe internal organ damage for life, and, in severe cases, they may even die on the spot due to internal bleeding. Therefore, in the battle against Entity 234-A, combatants must always be cautious and use heavy defense equipment, such as bulletproof shields, when necessary. Image caption: a replication of the ammunition used by Entity 234-A, produced by the Meg. Conventional attacks have been proven to be ineffective for Entity 234-A. Due to the impossibility of approaching the entity, the specific type of military wear they use is unknown. However, during an operation targeting them, the Meg noticed that all the small caliber bullets fired at the entity ricocheted off of it. Entity 234-A shows great hostility towards members of the UEC, and primarily targets them, though these entities somewhat also attack unaligned wanderers. Generally speaking, they will approach their targets at an extremely fast speed and attempt to engage close-ranged combat with them. In this situation, in order to eliminate the entity at the lowest cost, the combatants need to divide into multiple teams and quickly move away from it in different directions. Personnel can only fire after confirming that the entity has not targeted them. Additionally, it should be noted that Entity 234-A will not attack or affect the armed personnel and equipment of the Meg, and it cannot defend against attacks from Meg personnel. Entity 234-B. Habitats. Levels containing Meg bases. Entity 234-B looks very similar to the members of the Partisans of Artillery in appearance, and will use all the weapons and objects commonly used by them. The only difference between the two is that Entity 234-B instances often wear headgear that only exposes their eyes. This entity has both melee and ranged capabilities, but typically uses ranged attacks. The main weapon of Entity 234-B is a single-soldier shoulder-mounted rocket launcher, and the entity appears to carry unlimited ammunition. When the rocket comes into contact with the target, it will explode violently and produce high temperatures and a large amount of metal fragments. This is enough to destroy most well-defended facilities. Hand-to-hand combat with Entity 234-B is highly discouraged, as its body has a strong regenerative ability. Footnote: it is theoretically feasible to rapidly destroy various important parts of Entity 234-B's body to prevent its regeneration and kill the entity, but there is currently no successful precedent. End footnote. And appears to have no pain sensation. Image caption: part of a Meg base destroyed by Entity 234-B. Entity 234-B appears to have special abilities that affect communication devices. Within a 35-meter radius centered around Entity 234-B, all communication devices will enter a quote-unquote no-signal state, cease function, and all devices with screens will repeatedly flash the UEC logo. To deal with this special ability of the entity, actions targeting Entity 234-B typically require two teams. One is responsible for attacking, while the other is responsible for observing from a distance and reporting the situation to headquarters. Additionally, it should be noted that Entity 234-B will not attack or affect the armed personnel and equipment of the UEC, and it cannot defend against attacks from UEC personnel. Addenda. Addendum 1A. Appearance records of Entity 234. Number: Entity 234-A. Date of appearance: June 8th, 2021. Location: Level 218. Dead Man's Mile. Impact: at 1:15 p.m. on June 8th, an Entity 234-A instance appeared at the site of Meg Base Fortitude in Level 218. the UEC member responsible for patrolling within level 218 on that day identified this entity as a soldier of the Meg, so they requested a combat team from the headquarters to eliminate it. Due to a lack of understanding of the entity's special abilities, this combat team paid a huge price. In the end, 10 armed personnel belonging to the UEC were killed. Due to the deceptive appearance of the entity and the pre-existing conflict between the Meg and the UEC within the level, the UEC used this as a pretext to provoke a local war against the Meg. After this incident, Entity 234 was officially confirmed as an entity. Number: Entity 234-B. Date of appearance: January 21st, 2022. Location: Level 1, Habitable Zone. Impact: on the morning of the 21st, an Entity 234-B instance appeared in Level 1. The entity used explosives to destroy a portion of Base Alpha, and more than 10 members of the Meg were trapped under the rubble, with 8 of them dead. According to the agreement, members of the UEC quickly reached Level 1 and eliminated the instance. But, at this time, there are rumors within a certain community of Base Alpha claiming that the UEC came to seek revenge. This rumor quickly had an impact and immediately suppressed the official introduction of Entity 234 by the Meg. In the end, some members of the Meg attacked the UEC army without authorization, triggering a small violent incident. Number: Entity 234-A. Date of appearance: March 10th, 2022. Location: Level 831. Destroyed laboratory. Impact: destroyed level 831 and killed all members of the UEC in that level. The Meg first discovered the Entity 234-A instance within level 831 and quickly responded by eliminating it. However, due to the unclear true lethality of Entity 234-A, some speculate that the destruction of level 831 was caused by the Meg. Although there was no bloody conflict in the end, this incident still caused strong dissatisfaction among members of both sides, and a public opinion offensive against each other. Several unimportant appearance records have been excluded. Number: Entity 234-B. Date of appearance: December 23rd, 2023. Location: Level 4, Abandoned Office. Impact: the entity caused some damage to Base Omega, followed by a fierce conflict between the Meg and the UEC within the level. At 10:15 a.m. on December 23rd, 2023, an explosive was heard near Base Omega. 2 teams under the Wild Warriors Regiment quickly arrived at the scene of the incident and discovered an instance of Entity 234-B. According to the agreement, the Meg quickly reported the coordinates of the individual to the UEC and left a team to continue monitoring it. At 10:22, 10 fully armed members of the UEC arrived at the approximate coordinates and joined forces with the Wild Warriors. Both sides worked together to continuously fire at the approximate location of Entity 234-B, but did not achieve significant results. 5 minutes after firing, the Wild Warriors observed that Entity 234-B was attempting to escape the encirclement, so they dispatched 2 additional teams to conduct a blockade. After realizing this situation, the UEC also dispatched another team of 10 to pursue the entity. At 10:35, the entity created another explosion, and thus exposed its location. After confirming its location again, both sides continued to fire at it. At 10:42, the entity was confirmed dead. However, the armed members of the UEC did not leave Level 4 following the defeat of the entity, and instead aimed their guns at the approaching team of the Meg, leading to a tense standoff. At 11:02, armed personnel from the UEC suddenly opened fire, and the Wild Warriors quickly retaliated. Intense clashes erupted between the 2 sides, resulting in 4 deaths and 6 injuries. After this conflict, Entity 234 began to appear more frequently, likely due to the increased tension between the 2 factions. It reappeared only 2 months later. Addendum 42, an interview record about Entity 234. The following is excerpted from an interview with a senior researcher of Trial Testers Division. Content unrelated to Entity 234 has been removed for brevity. The researcher requested to remain anonymous. Q. Do you have any knowledge about Entity 234? A. Yes, I have been researching Entity 234 for some time now. I think I know better than anyone that Entity 234 is not one of those terrifying beings beyond our understanding, but a symbol of hatred that should not exist among humans in the Backrooms. Q. Why do you say that? A. When I entered the Backrooms, it was still the era of the Leaders. In 1995, the Leaders and M-Stable were in a fierce war. I was only 16 years old at the time, and in one of their conflicts, the settlement where I was located was destroyed, leading me to wander alone through the ruins. I don't know why they fought, but this war cost me my best friend, and all my possessions. A. Later, after the establishment of the Meg, I joined them, and looked forward to peace coming as soon as possible. The Meg, indeed, did a lot to help humanity in the Backrooms, but peace did not come. In 2014, as the UEC split from the Meg, endless conflicts began again. Since almost 10 years have passed, my memory of this matter has become blurred, but I still vaguely remember the reason why the UEC was established due to the imperfect safety standards of the Meg. Nowadays, those security standards have been updated countless times, but conflicts have not stopped. I don't know if they have any new excuses, but for me, this is a meaningless war. A. The Backrooms is a hell, where we face the risk of death every single day. But humans did not unite. Instead, we've created wars for our own interests, just like we did in the front rooms. We deploy a large number of troops and weapons on the borders of our sphere of influence, always ready to launch attackers on our compatriots. Q. But what does this have to do with Entity 234? What exactly is Entity 234? A. I'm sorry. I went too far off the topic just now. But what I said is the key part that explains the essence of Entity 234. On the surface, they may seem like terrifying Backrooms monsters, but in reality, they are manifestations of endless desires in human nature, and the meaningless opposition that arises from them. The entities come from us, rather than the Backrooms.